No one at Halon Dynamics had ever seen Julian Cross panic. He was the kind of billionaire who moved through glass corridors like gravity bent for him, calm, precise, untouchable. At 34, he had built an empire in clean energy and AI logistics, graced magazine covers, and rejected every public relationship rumor with a single sentence. I don't mix business with emotion. That was his brand. That was his armor. So when his assistant burst into his office, eyes red, hands shaking, every executive on the floor froze. Myra Vale was never late, never emotional, never unprepared. But that morning, she looked like someone whose world had collapsed quietly while everyone else was busy living. "Mr. Cross," she said, voice barely holding together, "I'm sorry. I know today is the board vote. I'll reschedule the Zurich call." Julian looked up from his tablet, irritation ready on his tongue. Then he saw her face. "Sit down," he said sharply. "What happened?" Myra hesitated. For 3 years she had been his shadow, handling crises, filtering chaos, protecting his time like it was oxygen. She had never asked for anything personal, ever. "My wedding," she said finally. It's today." Julian blinked. "Today." She nodded, swallowing hard. "Was." Something in her voice made him set the tablet aside. "He didn't show up," she continued. "No call, no message. His family's already there, guests too. I just found out he left the city last night." Silence filled the room. Julian leaned back, studying her, not as an assistant, but as a woman clearly holding herself together out of sheer discipline. "I'm sorry," he said, and he meant it. She forced a smile. "I'll take the day off after the board meeting. I didn't want to." "No," Julian interrupted. "You won't." She looked confused. "You won't go back there," he said. "Not like that." Myra frowned. "Mr. Cross, I appreciate the concern, but this isn't." "Who's attending?" he asked. She hesitated again. "About 200 people, society types. My mother flew in from Oregon. The venue's non-refundable." Julian stood up. In one smooth motion, he grabbed his jacket. "Cancel my morning," he said. Her eyes widened. "What?" "We're going to your wedding." "That's insane," she whispered. "You don't even." He looked at her, expression unreadable. "You deserve dignity," he said, "and I need something from you in return." Her heart skipped. "What kind of something?" "A marriage," Julian said calmly. "Temporary, strategic, clean." Myra laughed once, a short broken sound. "You're joking." "I don't joke," he replied. "Your guests get a groom. My board gets stability. The press gets a distraction I can control." She stared at him. "You're asking me to marry you." "I'm offering," he corrected. "No romance. No expectations. 6 months. We draft terms, separate lives, mutual benefit." Myra's chest tightened. This man, who didn't believe in love, who measured life in contracts, was offering to step into the most painful moment of her life like it was a chess move. "And if I say no?" she asked quietly. Julian didn't hesitate. "Then I'll still make sure you walk out of this with your head high," he said. "But if you say yes, no one ever humiliates you again." Outside, the city moved on. Inside, Myra felt the ground shift beneath her feet. She thought of the empty aisle, the whispers, her mother's eyes. She took a breath. 6 months, she said. Strict boundaries. Julian extended his hand. "Agreed." Neither of them noticed the way the air changed when their hands met, because feelings were never the plan, and that was exactly why this would ruin them both. Like and subscribe for more stories like this. The chapel fell silent the moment Julian Cross stepped inside. Not the polite kind of silence, the stunned, breath-held kind. 200 guests turned at once. Whispers rippled like a shockwave through silk dresses and tailored suits. "That's Julian Cross, the billionaire. What is he doing here?" Myra stood at the far end of the aisle, frozen. She was still in her wedding dress. White, simple, elegant, chosen months ago with trembling excitement that now felt like it belonged to another lifetime. Her bouquet shook in her hands as she watched Julian walk toward her, confident, composed, devastatingly out of place. This was not how her story was supposed to go. Her mother sat in the front row, eyes red from crying. The groom's side of the chapel was half empty now, abandoned like a bad memory no one wanted to explain. Julian reached Myra and stopped. For a split second, something human crossed his face. Hesitation, maybe, or awareness. "You okay?" he asked quietly. She nodded, though her heart was pounding so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. The officiant blinked. "Sir, may I help you?" Julian turned, voice calm and commanding. "You may begin." A murmur spread through the room. The officiant cleared his throat. "Are you replacing the groom?" Julian glanced at Myra. If she'll have me, he said. Every eye went to her. This was the moment, the point of no return. Myra inhaled, lifted her chin and said clearly, yes. Gasps echoed. Somewhere in the crowd, someone dropped a phone. The ceremony resumed, but nothing felt real. The words blurred together: commitment, partnership, vows, all spoken between two people who had agreed to none of it emotionally. When Julian slipped the ring onto her finger, his hand was steady. Hers was. You may kiss the bride, the officiant announced. Myra's breath caught. This wasn't in the agreement. Julian leaned in just enough to whisper, for show only. Then his lips brushed her cheek, soft, brief, respectful. But the cameras caught it perfectly. Applause erupted. Flashbulbs exploded. The humiliation that was meant to destroy her transformed into something else entirely: shock, envy, confusion. Outside the chapel, reporters were already gathering. Julian placed a hand at the small of her back, guiding her forward with practiced ease. Stay close, he murmured. Say nothing. Let them write the story they want. And they did. Billionaire CEO, Marries longtime assistant in shock ceremony. From boardroom to altar, a love story no one saw coming. Inside the limo, silence settled between them. Myra stared at her reflection in the tinted glass. A married woman, to a man she barely knew. I didn't think you'd actually go through with it, she said finally. Julian loosened his tie. Neither did you. She turned to him. Why help me like this, really? He paused. For years, he said, I've watched men underestimate you, talk over you, use you. Today, someone tried to erase you publicly. His eyes met hers. I don't allow that. Something tightened in her chest. Back at his penthouse, lawyers were already waiting. Contracts, NDAs, timelines, everything neatly outlined. 6 months, public appearances, separate bedrooms, no emotional obligation. Myra signed. So did Julian. That night, alone in the guest bedroom, Myra finally let herself cry. Not because she was heartbroken, but because somewhere between humiliation and survival, her life had taken a turn she could never undo. And in another room, Julian Cross stood at his window, staring at the city lights, feeling something unfamiliar settle into his chest. Regret, because for the first time in his life, a contract felt dangerous. And this was only the beginning. The morning after the wedding did not feel like a honeymoon. It felt like a boardroom briefing. Myra woke up in a bed that wasn't hers, surrounded by quiet so expensive it felt unreal. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city skyline, sunlight reflecting off steel and glass like a reminder of where she was now, inside Julian Cross's world. She sat up slowly, her left hand instinctively lifting. The ring was still there, heavy, cold, real. For a moment, panic rose in her chest. You married your boss. She took a deep breath, got dressed, and stepped out of the guest bedroom. Julian was already awake. He stood in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, reviewing something on a tablet while a coffee machine hummed softly beside him. He looked exactly the same as he did at the office, controlled, composed, untouchable. Except now, she noticed things she never had before. The faint crease between his brows when he concentrated, the way he hadn't shaved yet, the fact that he hadn't slept much either. Good morning, he said without looking up. Morning, she replied. An awkward pause followed. They were married, and neither of them knew what to say. Julian gestured toward the island. Coffee. Yes, she said quickly. Please. He poured 2 cups, slid one toward her, then finally met her eyes. Today will be loud, he said. Press, investors, social media. We need to be aligned. She nodded. I figured. He tapped the tablet, and a document appeared. Already open, already prepared. Ground rules, Julian said. Clear, non-negotiable. Myra folded her hands. Go ahead. Rule 1, he began. In public, we are a united couple. No hesitation, no visible discomfort. Understood. Rule 2, no personal questions answered without mutual approval. She nodded again. Rule 3, he paused briefly, then continued. Our private lives remain separate. No emotional expectations. No intimacy unless explicitly agreed upon for appearances. Myra's jaw tightened slightly. That won't be a problem. Julian studied her for a moment. Good. He scrolled. Rule 4, this marriage ends in 6 months. Clean exit, no drama. She took a sip of coffee, grounding herself. And if the press suspects otherwise? They won't, he said calmly. I control the narrative. Something about that sentence unsettled her. Later that day, the narrative exploded. By noon, Myra's name was everywhere. Former assistant, secret romance, power couple. At Halon Dynamics, Employees stared as she walked in beside Julian, no longer 2 steps behind him, but at his side. Board members smiled too widely. Investors congratulated them. And then came Evelyn Cross. Julian's mother did not raise her voice. She didn't need to. She arrived at the penthouse that evening dressed in quiet authority, her eyes sharp as they landed on Myra. "So," Evelyn said, sipping her tea, "you're the assistant." Myra straightened. "Yes, ma'am. And now my daughter-in-law," Evelyn added, tone unreadable. Julian stepped in smoothly. "Mother." Evelyn raised a hand. "I'm speaking to her." She turned back to Myra. "Do you love my son?" The room went still. Myra felt Julian's gaze on her. She chose her words carefully. "I respect him." Evelyn smiled faintly. "That wasn't the question." Julian interrupted. "This marriage is our decision." Evelyn stood. "Then I hope you understand the consequences." After she left, silence filled the apartment. "She hates me," Myra said quietly. Julian shook his head. "She hates uncertainty." Myra looked at him. "And what am I to you?" He didn't answer immediately. "That," he said finally, "is irrelevant." But later that night, as Myra lay awake staring at the ceiling, she couldn't stop thinking about the way Julian had stood between her and his mother. Protective, instinctive, and in the darkness of his own room, Julian replayed Evelyn's question over and over. "Do you love my son?" He had built his life on logic, control, and distance. But now, with one impulsive decision, something fragile had entered the equation, and Julian Cross was starting to realize. Rules written in ink were easy. Feelings were not. The first test of their marriage came sooner than either of them expected. 3 days later, Julian stood in front of the mirror adjusting his cufflinks while Myra sat on the edge of the bed, smoothing invisible wrinkles from a navy blue dress she had never planned to wear in this context. The Halon Global Charity Gala. Invite only, high society, media everywhere. "You don't have to come," Julian said, not turning around. "I can handle it alone." Myra looked up. "That would look strange. Newlyweds don't attend events separately." A pause. "You're right," he said. "Thank you." The words were small, but they landed heavier than expected. Downstairs, cameras flashed the moment they arrived. Julian's hand found hers. Firm, warm, deliberate. The contact sent a jolt through her body. For appearances, she reminded herself. "Smile," he murmured. "Not too much." She almost laughed. Inside, the room buzzed with power and wealth. Conversations paused as they passed. "That's her. She used to be his assistant." Smart move, honestly. Myra kept her posture perfect, her expression composed, but every whisper cut. Then they met Daniel Reeves. Julian stiffened almost imperceptibly. Daniel was tall, polished, and smiling far too confidently. "Myra," he said warmly, "you look radiant." Her stomach dropped. Julian's voice was cool. "Do you know my wife?" Daniel extended his hand. Daniel Reeves, former fiancé. The word hung in the air like smoke. Julian's grip on Myra tightened. "I didn't know you were coming," Myra said quietly. Daniel chuckled. "I almost didn't, but curiosity won." He leaned closer. "Congratulations, by the way, quite the upgrade." Julian's jaw clenched. "She doesn't need upgrades," Julian said flatly. "She chose." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Did she?" Myra felt heat rush to her face. "I did," she said firmly, "and I'm very happy." Daniel studied her, something unreadable flickering across his face. "Well," he said smoothly, "I wish you both the best." He walked away. The moment he was gone, Myra exhaled shakily. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't know he'd be here." Julian didn't answer right away. "Did he hurt you?" he asked instead. Emotion crept into his voice, raw, unexpected. She hesitated. "He left without explanation, like I didn't matter." Julian nodded slowly. "Then he's a coward." Something in the way he said it, final, protective, made her chest ache. Later that evening, as they stood on the balcony overlooking the city, Myra finally spoke. "You didn't have to defend me like that." Julian turned to her. "Yes, I did." "Why?" she asked. He searched for the right words. "Because," he said, "I don't tolerate disrespect toward what's mine." The sentence hit harder than any kiss could have. Silence stretched between them. "I should clarify," Julian added quickly, "publicly." Myra smiled faintly. "Of course." But the damage was done. Back at the penthouse, the tension lingered. They stood in the hallway, unsure how to part. "Good night," she said. Julian nodded. "Good night." He walked away, then stopped. "Myra." She turned. "You were impressive tonight." Her heart skipped. "Thank you," she replied softly. Later, alone in her room, Myra pressed her palm to her chest, trying to calm the unfamiliar flutter there. Across the hall, Julian sat on his bed, staring at his hands. He had meant every word, and that frightened him more than any contract ever had, because the first crack had appeared, and neither of them knew how deep it would go. The first argument didn't happen loudly. There were no raised voices, no slammed doors, just a silence sharp enough to cut. It started with a headline. Myra saw it while scrolling through her phone at breakfast. Julian Cross SOFTNS after marriage. Insiders say love changed HIM. She read it twice, then a third time. Julian noticed her expression. What is it? She turned the screen toward him. His jaw tightened. Speculation. They're not wrong about the change, she said quietly. Julian looked up sharply. I haven't changed. Myra set the phone down. You defended me publicly. You don't usually do that. That was strategic, he replied immediately. Her eyes met his. Was it? Silence. Julian stood, straightening his jacket. We need to be careful. This arrangement only works if we stay within the boundaries we set. She nodded. I know, but something had already shifted. Later that day, Myra returned to Halon Dynamics, not as an assistant but as Julian Cross's wife. Her access badge no longer worked. The receptionist looked uncomfortable. I'm sorry, Ms. Cross. Security needs updated authorization. Ms. Cross. The name felt strange, heavy. Julian fixed it within minutes, but the message was clear. She no longer fit anywhere cleanly. In meetings, executives spoke around her. Some smiled too much. Others avoided eye contact. At lunch, Myra overheard whispers. She's lucky. She married up. She must have planned it. By the time she reached Julian's office, her composure was cracking. I can't work here like this, she said. Julian looked up. What happened? I've lost credibility, she said. I'm no longer seen as competent, just convenient. He leaned back thinking. Then you won't work here, he said. Her eyes widened. Excuse me. You'll head a new division, he continued calmly. Directly under the board, independent authority. Myra stared at him. That's a massive leap. You're qualified, he said, and it removes conflict of interest. She hesitated. People will say it's favoritism. They already are, Julian replied. This way you control the outcome. Emotion welled up unexpectedly. You didn't have to do this, she said. Julian's voice softened. I know. That night, exhaustion hit them both. A storm rolled in, thunder rattling the windows. The power flickered, then went out. Myra froze in the hallway, heart racing. I don't like storms, she admitted quietly. Julian stopped. Why didn't you say something? Because it didn't matter. He guided her toward the living room, lighting candles with practiced calm. Sit, he said. You're safe. The thunder cracked again, closer this time. Without thinking, Myra reached for his hand. The moment stretched. This was not for appearances. Julian didn't pull away. Instead, he squeezed her hand once, grounding steady. Too intimate, too real. When the lights finally came back on, they realized how close they were standing. Myra pulled her hand back first. I'm sorry, she said quickly. Julian's voice was low. Don't. She looked at him. If we cross this line, he continued, we won't be able to go back. Her throat tightened. Maybe we already have. They stood there, caught between what was agreed and what was felt. And somewhere deep inside, both of them knew. The most dangerous lines are the ones you don't see until they're already behind you. The backlash did not wait. It arrived on a Monday morning, wrapped in politeness and legal language. Myra was halfway through, reviewing projections for her new division, when Julian's legal counsel called an emergency meeting. The boardroom doors closed. The air shifted. We have a situation, said Arthur Klein, the senior board member, folding his hands. Concerns have been raised. Julian's expression was unreadable. Be specific. Arthur glanced at Myra. Your marriage. There it was. Several investors believe this union compromises leadership objectivity, Arthur continued. There are whispers of influence, favoritism, emotional decision-making. Myra felt heat creep up her neck. Julian leaned forward. If this is about performance, it's about perception, Arthur interrupted, and perception affects valuation. A pause. Some are suggesting, Arthur added carefully, a temporary step back for her. Myra's chest tightened. Julian stood. That won't happen. Arthur sighed. Julian, this company is bigger than. My wife is not expendable, Julian said sharply, and neither is her work. Silence followed. Myra stared at him. My wife. Outside the boardroom, reporters were already speculating. Is the Cross marriage a corporate risk? Love or liability? By evening, Myra had reached her breaking point. "This is my fault," she said in the penthouse, packing. "I'm a weakness they can attack." Julian watched her, jaw tight. "You are not a weakness. They wouldn't be doing this if it weren't for me. They're doing this because they're afraid of losing control," he said. She stopped. "Then why does it feel like I'm costing you everything?" Julian crossed the room. "Look at me." She did. "I chose this," he said quietly. "No one forced me." Her voice shook. "You weren't supposed to choose me." The words hung between them. Julian's control cracked. "I know," he said. "That's the problem." They stood too close again. Dangerously close. Then his phone rang. He stepped back, breaking the moment. It was Evelyn. "And this," his mother said bluntly, "before it ends you." Julian closed his eyes. "I won't. She's already a liability," Evelyn pressed. "And you know how this ends." Julian looked at Myra, standing across the room, strong, exhausted, terrified she was ruining his life. "No," he said firmly, "I don't." He hung up. That night, the media pressure intensified. Paparazzi waited outside the building. Myra couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m., she knocked on Julian's door. "I can't do this," she whispered. "I'll leave. Announce an amicable separation. Say it was a mistake." Julian stared at her, heart pounding. "You think walking away will protect me?" he asked. "Yes." "It won't," he said. "It will only confirm their narrative." She swallowed. "Then what do we do?" Julian took a breath. "We fight." "For 6 months?" she asked. He hesitated. "No," he said quietly, "for as long as it takes." The words scared them both, because for the first time, the marriage wasn't just a shield. It was a battle, and neither of them was sure they would come out unscarred. The pressure changed them, not all at once, but slowly, like water finding cracks in stone. Julian worked longer hours. Myra stopped sleeping. They played their roles flawlessly in public, hands intertwined, smiles timed, unity perfected. But behind closed doors, tension lived in the silences between them. One evening, after a brutal week of press attacks and shareholder calls, Julian came home past midnight. Myra was still awake, sitting on the couch, laptop open, eyes dull with exhaustion. "You should be sleeping," he said, loosening his tie. "So should you," she replied. He noticed the screen, financial models, investor risk analysis. "You don't have to do this," he said. "The board can handle." "I need to earn my place," she interrupted. "I need them to see I'm not just my wife," Julian finished quietly. She flinched. "That's not what I meant." "It is," he said, "and they're wrong." She stood, frustration finally spilling over. "Then why does everything I touch turn into ammunition against you?" "Because they were waiting for an excuse," Julian snapped. "This isn't about you." "Then stop acting like it's not affecting you," she shot back. Silence slammed down between them. Julian ran a hand through his hair. "I'm tired." "So am I," she said, "and I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending this doesn't hurt." The word pretending lingered. Julian looked at her sharply. "You think I'm pretending?" She hesitated. "Yes," she said softly. "I think you're pretending this is still just a contract." His jaw tightened. "You're wrong." "Then tell me what this is," she challenged. The air grew heavy. Julian stepped closer. "If I answer that, everything changes." Myra's voice trembled. "Maybe it needs to." Thunder rolled outside. Another storm building, echoing the first night they had crossed a line. The lights flickered. Again, Julian stopped inches from her. "This isn't safe," he said. "For who?" she asked. "You or me?" His breath hitched. "I don't know how to want you without destroying something," he admitted. The honesty shattered her. "Then stop wanting me," she whispered. He didn't. Instead, he reached out, then froze, hand hovering between them. "This is where it ends," he said hoarsely. "If I touch you, I won't stop." Myra closed the distance herself. The kiss was not gentle. It was desperation, frustration, weeks of restraint breaking all at once. Then the power came back on. The light flooded the room. Reality slammed into them. Myra pulled away first, breathless, eyes wide. "Oh God," she whispered. "What did we just do?" Julian stared at her like he was seeing the damage already unfolding. "We crossed it," he said. "The line." She backed away. This was a mistake. His chest tightened. Was it? She couldn't answer. She turned and walked to her room, locking the door behind her. Julian stood alone in the living room, heart racing, fists clenched. He had broken his own rules, and for the first time, he didn't regret it. But regret was coming, because the morning would bring consequences, and neither of them knew how to face them. Morning came without mercy. Myra woke up with the memory of the kiss burning behind her eyes. For a few seconds, she stayed perfectly still, hopping, stupidly, that it had been a dream. It was. Her phone buzzed nonstop on the nightstand. She ignored it. In the kitchen, Julian stood at the counter, untouched coffee going cold in his hand. He hadn't slept. The city outside looked the same as always, but inside the penthouse, something irreversible had happened. When Myra finally stepped out of her room, they froze. No good morning, no explanations, just the truth sitting between them. "I'll be late tonight," she said, breaking the silence. Her voice was controlled, too controlled. "I have meetings off-site." Julian nodded. "All right." That was it. She left. By noon, the consequences arrived. Anonymous source claims cross-marriage is more than business. Insider hints at real feelings behind power union. Julian crushed the article on his tablet with a swipe. "Find the leak," he told his head of security. "Now." Meanwhile, Myra walked into a hostile room. The boardroom felt colder than before. Arthur Klein didn't bother with pleasantries. "You've put us in a difficult position." Myra held his gaze. "My performance metrics are exceeding projections." "That's not what this is about," Arthur said. "Your relationship is destabilizing the company." "My relationship is my marriage," she replied, "which you previously accepted, under controlled conditions," another board member added. "Those conditions appear compromised." Myra understood then. They weren't afraid of scandal. They were afraid of emotion, because emotion meant unpredictability. "I won't apologize for being human," she said quietly. Arthur's expression hardened. "Then perhaps you should consider whether this role is right for you." She stood. "If this company cannot tolerate integrity without control," she said, "then perhaps it's not." She walked out before they could stop her. That evening, Julian received the call he had been dreading. "She resigned," Arthur said, "effective immediately." Julian went still. "You pushed her. We gave her options. You cornered her." Julian ended the call and drove fast. When he reached the apartment, Myra was already packing. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Leaving," she said, folding clothes with mechanical precision. "This was always temporary." "No," he said sharply. "This is because of me." She didn't look at him. "This is because I crossed a line I promised myself I wouldn't." He stepped closer. "Say it, say you don't want this." Her hands shook. "I can't afford to want it," she said. The words gutted him. "You think walking away will fix this?" he asked. "You think I'll let them win?" "This isn't about winning," she said, finally turning to face him. Tears filled her eyes but didn't fall. "This is about survival." Julian reached for her arm. She didn't pull away. "I don't know how to protect you without losing you," he said. Her voice broke. "Then maybe loving me means letting me go." The word loving hung in the air like a confession neither of them had planned to make. A knock interrupted them. "Security." "Mr. Cross," the guard said carefully. "There's someone here to see Mrs. Cross." Myra stiffened. "Who?" Julian asked. The guard hesitated. "Daniel Reeves." Myra closed her eyes. The past had come back for its price. And this time, the cost might be everything. Daniel Reeves stood in the doorway like a ghost Myra had buried years ago and prayed would stay buried. He looked older, sharper. The boy she once loved had been replaced by a man carrying unresolved bitterness in his eyes. "Myra," Daniel said softly, "we need to talk." Julian stepped forward instinctively. "You're trespassing." Daniel didn't look at him. His eyes never left Myra. "I'm here because she never finished the conversation she owes me." Myra's chest tightened. "You don't get to show up like this." "I do," Daniel replied. "You married another man 2 weeks before our wedding. I think that earns me 5 minutes. Silence thickened the room. Julian exhaled slowly. "You can have privacy," he said, though every word tasted like acid. Myra turned to him, panic flickering across her face. "Julian." "It's fine," he said tightly. "I'll be in my office." When the door closed, Daniel's mask cracked. "So this is him," he said, "the billionaire savior." "This isn't what you think," Myra replied. Daniel laughed bitterly. "Isn't it? You disappeared, no explanation, no goodbye, just headlines." "I was trying to protect you," she said. "You had debts, legal exposure." Julian offered to buy you." Daniel snapped. Her eyes filled. "Offered to save us." Daniel's voice dropped. "You never trusted me enough to let me fall with you." Myra swallowed. "I trusted you enough to walk away." He stepped closer. "And now, are you happy?" The question cut deeper than he intended. Myra didn't answer. That was answer enough. Meanwhile, Julian stood behind glass walls, watching the city blur as something ugly took root in his chest. Jealousy. Not the petty kind, the terrifying kind that came with fear of loss. When Daniel finally left, Myra looked wrecked. "What did he want?" Julian asked. "The truth," she said, "and closure." "And did he get it?" She shook her head. No one does. Julian nodded slowly. You're still leaving. Yes, she said, but not because of him. He waited. Because if I stay, she whispered, I'll destroy both of us. Julian's voice was calm, but dangerous. You don't get to decide that alone. She met his eyes. I'm not strong enough to stay. His heart clenched. Then let me be strong for you. Tears finally fell. I love you, she said. That's the problem. The admission shattered the last illusion. Julian crossed the room and pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was already gone. Then we're already past saving, he murmured. Outside, cameras flashed. Inside, Myra rested her head against his chest, memorizing the sound of a life she might never live. Because tomorrow she would leave, and love, once exposed, never survives quietly. Morning arrived like a verdict. No storms, no drama, just sunlight spilling through glass windows, cruel in how normal it felt. Myra's suitcase stood by the door. Julian hadn't moved all night. He sat in the chair across from her, tie discarded, eyes red but dry. When she zipped the bag closed, the sound echoed louder than it should have. So this is it, he said quietly. She nodded. If I stay, I'll always be the weakness they exploit, and you'll always be the one bleeding for it. He stood. I don't care about them anymore. That's the problem, she replied softly. I care too much. She stepped closer, pressing her forehead against his chest one last time. His arms wrapped around her automatically, like muscle memory refusing to die. I never planned to love you, she whispered. Neither did I, he said. That's why it ruined us. They pulled apart slowly, painfully. At the door, Myra hesitated. Julian, what we had was real. Don't ever let anyone tell you it was. His voice cracked. It was the realest thing in my life. She smiled through tears. Then she left. Weeks passed. The company stabilized. Julian crushed the board revolt, restructured leadership, and made headlines again, but this time alone. Reporters asked about his wife. She's no longer part of the story, he answered once. Never again. Across the city, Myra started over. New job, new apartment, no headlines, no protection. But peace came at a cost. Sometimes, late at night, she still checked the news, just to make sure he was okay. And sometimes, Julian stood by his window, staring at the skyline, wondering if love was worth surviving if it meant losing it. They never spoke again, but somewhere between sacrifice and silence, they both learned the same truth. Some love stories aren't meant to last. They're meant to change you forever. If this story moved you, if you felt the tension, the sacrifice, the heartbreak, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more emotional, cinematic stories that unfold like real lives. Messy, beautiful, and unforgettable. Every like helps these stories reach more hearts. Every subscription keeps the journey going. This was Billionaire Marries his assistant to save her wedding. Feelings were never the plan, and some plans were never meant to succeed.